everyone, my name is Pearls and I'm excited to read to you guys today chapter 1 of Beverley Naidoo's The Other Side of Truth. So I really hope you guys enjoy. Thank you. So chapter 1, Survivors, Lagos, Nigeria. Sade is slipping her English book into a school bag when Mama screams. 2 sharp cracks splinter the air. She hears her father's fierce cry rising, falling. No, no! The revving of a car and skidding of tires smother his voice. Her bag topples from the bed, spilling books, pen, and pencil onto the floor. She races to the veranda, pushing past Femi in the doorway. His body is wooden with fright. Mama mi? She whispers. Papa is kneeling in the driveway, Mama partly curled up against him. One bare leg stretches out in front of her. His strong hands grip her, trying to halt the growing scarlet monster, but it has already spread down her bright white nurse's uniform. It stains the earth around them. A few seconds, that's all. Later it will always seem much longer. A small gathering began to swell the house, tense and hushed. Sade stared numbly out the sitting room window where Joseph stood nervously on guard. As each new bang, rattle or hoot, he peered anxiously through the crack between the metal gates. His head moved painfully forwards and backwards, like that of an old tortoise. His fingers floundered and fumbled each time he had to wrench back the bolt. He'd been a witness. 1 second he'd been casually pushing back one of the gates so his master could drive off to work. The next second his madame lay slumped on the ground and a white car was screeching away through the wide avenues of palm trees. Uncle Tunde, Papa's eldest brother, arrived with the doctor. Sade and Femi huddled close to their father as he steered the doctor to the sofa where Mama now lay. Her face stared upwards to the ceiling fan, with lips slightly parted and a tiny frown, as if there was only some small disturbance in a dream. But the flowers on the embroidered bedspread wrapped around her were drenched in crimson and told a different story. Sade clutched her brother's hand, waiting. I'm very sorry, Mr. Sola. Your wife heard no chance, straight to the heart. The doctor pronounced the verdict in a low purr. I shall inform the authorities, and, if you wish, New Era Hospital for the post-mortem. Papa, usually brimming over with words, simply nodded. His arms drew the children in tightly as a high trembling voice quivered next to them. Mama Buki's cry wailed like a lonely seabird. Sister me, sister me. Sade's own voice was lost somewhere deep inside her. She wanted to rush across, grab hold of Mama, squeeze breath back into her before it was too late, but she could not move. Kneeling beside her sister, Mama Buki's tears swept over her broad cheeks. She covered Mama's face with the corner of the embroidered bedspread. Sade watched in horror, her own silent tears trapped within her like a stone. Grief burst around them like a pierced boil. All about her, Sade heard people repeat fragments of the story. Mr. Falana, one of their neighbours, and also Papa's editor-in-chief, had heard both the gunshots and the getaway car. In the deathly hush that followed, he peeped out from his own grave and on the other side of the road. Seeing the entrance to the Solaya house wide open, he feared the worst and rushed across, followed by his wife still in her dressing gown. It was he who helped Papa carry Mama inside. Now he had to hurry away to warn his other staff. Papa was the most outspoken journalist on Speak, one of the weekly newspapers in English, but he might not have been the only target. Even before any newspaper headlines, the news would be darting by word and mouth across the pavements, highways and cables of Lagos. When the news reached Mama's friends at the hospital where she worked, there would be no end of visitors. Suffocated by arms and voices, and with the echo of the gunshot still in her head, Sade felt the urge to escape. Please. The effort was great, and her voice was small, but it worked, and Sade manoeuvred her way out. Papa's study would be quiet. As she entered the study, the telephone rang. Automatically, she picked it up, covering one ear to hear more easily. Is that the home of Mr. Fularian Solaya, who writes for Speak? The man's voice was soft but perfectly clear. Yes. Do not trouble him. Just give him a message. Tell him, if we get the family first, what does it matter? The voice wrung the breath out of her, like a snake secretly squeezing her throat. Frantically, she signalled to Uncle Tunde, who had come to the study door. He strode across to Papa's desk, but as he reached for the receiver, there was a click. Sade struggled to repeat the horrible words. Her uncle's thick, greying eyebrows lurched up over his gold-rimmed spectacles. He looked very grave. A while later, Joseph unlocked the gates for a sleek white ambulance. The small crowd of mourners stood aside to make a pathway for the two men with a stretcher. Mama Buki led the hymn singing. Barely 2 minutes later, pressed between Mama Buki's heaving, swaying body and her father, who was silent and almost perfectly still, Sade watched them carry Mama away under a blinding white sheet. The ambulance door clicked shut. The windows were darkened, and Sade could no longer even see the sheet. Everyone felt quiet. The only sound was of the ambulance's motor and of Joseph grappling once again with the gates. His old body pulled the attention as the vehicle backed out, as if in a final salute. That was all. Mama was gone. Uncle Tunde led Papa gently away. The plum-coloured swells of Papa's tunic were splattered with gashes of a deep scarlet and mother's blood. Take care of the children, please, Papa murmured to Mama Buki. I need to. He gestured with both his hands towards the clothes. Mama Buki, her eyes red and watery, shepherded Sade and Femi towards the kitchen. But as she turned to share her grief with a friend, Sade and Femi exchanged glances and wove their way back through the cluster of mourners. Sade caught snatches of phrases, Yoruba mingled with English. Oh man, say no. What a pity. Such a good woman. Evil people. He was their target. Bread of sorrow saved him. Sade studied her own clothes. Not a speck, not a stain on her grey school skirts and blue blouse to show what terrible thing had happened. She ran to her room, feeling impelled to strip away the uniform. If only by putting on something fresh and new, they could begin the day again. She brushed her fingers along a line of clothes, colours of sea, forests, flowers and birds. Her fingers, however, came to rest on a soft black velvet dress with the white lace collar that Mama had made for her when Papa's father died. She wanted to lie down and make everything stop. But Femi was outside, calling her name, his voice urgent. Come, he insisted, when she opened the door. Grabbing her hand, he led her to Papa's study, ignoring the room of visitors. Sade fully expected Uncle Tunde would tell them to leave when they crept into the study. He was leaning against Papa's desk, in his sober black suit, the one he wore on the days he was meant to be in court. Papa often used to tease him. Be free like me. I wear whatever I want to work. Uncle Tunde paused to acknowledge the children. His grey, flecked beard made his face look square and solid. It was a family joke that his hair had become the colour of a judge's wig. Papa, seated beside the desk in a full-length ink-black agbada, hardly seemed to notice as they settled themselves by the untidy side table stacked with books and paper. It was usually their father whose arms, hands, and even fingers danced like furious gymnasts whenever he argued or talked about things that fired him up. It was usually their uncle who folded his arms as he listened. If you are a lawyer, Uncle Tunde had told Sade, you need to keep cool and listen very carefully. But today, their father's arms hung without life. It was his older brother whose hand pleaded along with his voice. They are not finished with you, Florarian. They won't stop until they've shut you up.
You know what this means. You've gone too far with them now. Their father always took chances with what he wrote. He said nothing new, but Sade knew his words. The truth is the truth. How can I write what's untrue? Sade knew how worried Mama had been about his latest article, but Sade had never heard Mama ever try to stop him, like Uncle Tunde did. The uncle stretched across the desk to pick up a newspaper. One hand resting on their father's shoulder, he began to read aloud. Why do the brass buttons who rule over us spend millions of naira sending their children to the most expensive schools and colleges in England and America? How does a soldier, even a general, acquire so much money? And what about our own schools and colleges here in Nigeria? Our brass button generals shut them down when teachers complain they have not been paid, and when students complain they have no books. It seems that they can sleep easily in their beds, as though hundreds of thousands of our own children are not being taught. What a disgrace for a country that has held some of the finest universities and schools in Africa. But then our commander-in-chief believes more in buttons than brains. Normally, Papa would have flared up. Every word of that is true. But today, he was mute. His face was turned to the window that overlooked the front gate where the car had stopped. Their uncle slid the newspaper back onto the desk. You call the article Our Children's Future. What do you imagine will happen now to your own, Florian? Uncle Tunde stared across at the two children. Femi chewed on his thumb. Sade sensed the tightness of his body, small for a 10-year-old, but tough as a wire, Mama used to say. Sade felt riveted to a chair. In all her 12 years, she had never heard her uncle or any grown-up talk quite like this. Normally, she and Femi would have been sent outside or to another room, nor had she ever seen Papa like this before, as if his spirit had flown out of from him. Uncle Tunde did not hold back. Look, Florian, we all know how brave you are, braver than most of us, but are you wise? You say our country must have writers to tell the truth, but tell me, what can you write from the grave? Scent from the pink magnolia beyond the window bars drifted inside, and Papa continued to gaze quietly at the window. For goodness sake, Florian, look at what they've just done to Ken. The whole world was shouting, Sarawira must not hang. But did His Excellency Commander-in-Chief General Abacha and his soldiers care? Of course not. So what will hold them back with an old-known writer called Salaya? To them, you're just another troublemaking pen pusher. Look, if you get out of here, join Delhi in London, at least you can go on writing. Let the outside world know what's happening to Nigeria. What good is the truth on the lips of a dead journalist? And in that state, you wouldn't be much good to your children either. Femi couldn't take it any longer. Pushing back his chair, he ran to their father. Sade followed, as if to protect him from further attack. From the government's secret bullets or from Uncle Tunde's razor-sharp words? She was not quite sure here. Papa's arms, a moment ago so listless, enclosed them both firmly. Nestling in the folds of his tunic, Sade curled her fingers through Papa's and was relieved to feel him responding. Uncle Tunde stood, watching. He had said enough. Your uncle is right, their father said finally. We need to get away for a while. Grandma will hide us. We can go to the family house, Femi cried. Papa shook his head. Even family house won't be safe. These people mean business. They know our village, and I don't want them coming near Grandma. Grandma was Mama's mother. Papa paused after her name. I should have listened to your mother. So Mama had tried to warn Papa after all, privately, out of the children's hearing. Yes, that would have been her way. Suddenly, great awful sobs rose up inside Sade, shaking her, making her tremble. She heard her own strange sounds as she desperately sucked in gasps of air, feeling Femi stiff and silent beside her. Uncle Tunde slipped from the room, closing the door behind them, on three figures clasped together like survivors on a tiny raft.